Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. This time, we're going to explore how algorithms, especially YouTube's recommendation system, get to know us and even AI agents.
Yeah, it's really fascinating stuff.
It is. It is. Have you ever wondered how YouTube just seems to know what you want to watch? I mean, even before you do.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It can be a little spooky sometimes, but it all comes down to this feedback loop and some very clever algorithms.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's dive right in and unpack all of this.
Okay.
Let's start with how YouTube actually collects data. It doesn't just passively suggest videos. It's constantly learning from your every interaction.
Right.
What you watch, how long you watch, your likes, your dislikes,
Mm-hmm.
even your comments. It's almost like it's building this digital profile of you, wouldn't you say?
Exactly. What's really fascinating here is that YouTube uses all of this data to extract key features like engagement metrics and even video metadata.
Okay.
And it uses this to feed its machine learning models. We're talking about sophisticated deep neural networks and even reinforcement learning models.
Reinforcement learning.
Yeah.
That sounds intense. Can you break that down for us a bit?
Sure. Imagine training a dog, right? You reward them for good behavior.
Right.
Well, in this case, your likes, watch time, those act as rewards for the algorithm.
Uh-huh.
The more you engage with certain content, the better it gets at recommending similar things to you.
So it's constantly learning and evolving. And this applies to AI agents too.
Absolutely. The principles are the same, whether it's a human or an AI agent interacting with the system. It's all about collecting data, analyzing patterns, and then refining the recommendation policy.
But doesn't that mean that we just get stuck in this echo chamber, only seeing things that we already like?
Right, that's where things get really interesting. YouTube actually balances this thing called exploitation.
Exploitation.
Yeah.
What's that?
Well, that's basically giving you more of what it thinks you like. It wants to keep you on the platform, right?
Yeah.
But it also does something called exploration. That means it will occasionally throw in something completely different just to test the waters and see if your interests have broadened at all.
Oh, I see. So they're not just trying to feed me what they think I want.
Right.
They're also trying to broaden my horizons a little bit.
Exactly.
That's really interesting. So this whole feedback loop, this constant interplay between the algorithm and the user, you said that's what drives personalization across the entire digital world, right?
Exactly. It's how apps, websites, even AI agents understand and respond to our individual needs.
It's mind-blowing. So YouTube uses all this data to understand our preferences, but what about context? Like, I'm probably going to watch something different on a Friday night than I am, say, on a Monday morning before work.
You got it. YouTube actually factors in all sorts of contextual features like the time of day, your location, even what device you're using. It's constantly adapting its recommendations to your current situation.
Wow, so it's really this dynamic dance between the algorithm and the user, constantly learning and adapting.
It is. It is.
But what does this all mean for us?
That's the big question, isn't it? Awareness is key here. The more we understand how these algorithms work, the better we are to manage our online experiences.
I see.
We can provide feedback, adjust settings, even take breaks when we need to. It's about being an informed participant in this whole digital dance.
Being in control.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense. This is all very interesting stuff, and I think it's important for everyone to understand just how these things work.
I agree.
So thank you so much for explaining all this to us. I think we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back and dive even deeper.
Sounds good.
Welcome back to our deep dive into algorithmic awareness. Before the break, we were talking about how YouTube personalizes our viewing experience based on things like our watch history and even the time of day.
Right.
It's really amazing how these algorithms work behind the scenes.
It is. It all comes down to this feedback loop we've been talking about.
Okay?
Imagine this vast network of sensors that are meticulously tracking every single interaction.
All right.
Each click, each pause, each comment, it's all recorded and fed into the system.
So YouTube's like keeping this detailed diary of our digital life.
That's one way to put it. But it's not just about storing data. It's
Mhm.
about extracting meaningful insights from it. And that's where feature extraction comes in.
Okay, feature extraction.
Yeah. Think of it as YouTube creating this unique fingerprint for each video and for each user.
Well, fingerprint.
A fingerprint. This captures things like the video topic, the length, the emotions that it evokes, your watch history, your engagement patterns, your preferences.
So it's translating our viewing habits into a language the algorithm can understand.
Exactly. And then these fingerprints are used to train YouTube's machine learning models.
Oh, okay.
We've talked about deep neural networks and reinforcement learning, but there's another key player here, and that is collaborative filtering models.
Collaborative filtering. I think I've heard that term before, but I'm not really sure what it means.
Okay, so imagine you and I have very similar tastes in videos. We both love documentaries about quirky historical events, for instance.
Okay.
Let's say you discover this fascinating documentary that I haven't seen yet.
Uh,
A collaborative filtering model might then recommend that same video to me, even though it's not something I've watched before.
so it's like tapping into the wisdom of the crowd.
Exactly. It's using the preferences of similar users to suggest new content that we might enjoy.
That's really cool.
It is. But remember, these models, they aren't static. They're constantly being evaluated and refined. And YouTube uses something called A/B testing to compare the performance of different recommendation strategies.
A/B testing, what is that?
So it's like running a series of controlled experiments. Different groups of users are exposed to different versions of the algorithm. Their engagement metrics are carefully tracked, and then the results of these tests help YouTube fine-tune the models.
So it's this continuous cycle of learning and improvement.
Ex-
The algorithm is not just making recommendations, but it's analyzing how we respond and then using that feedback to get even smarter.
That's right.
Now, earlier we talked about how the algorithm caters to both human users and AI agents.
Right?
Does that mean that AI agents are treated just like human viewers with their own unique preferences and tastes?
That's a really fascinating question. It touches on this broader point about the relationship between humans and algorithms.
Yeah.
As AI agents become more sophisticated, they're increasingly interacting with platforms like YouTube, not just as passive consumers, but as active participants.
So it's not just about us telling the algorithm what we like anymore.
Right.
It's also about AI agents interacting with these systems and learning from them and even potentially influencing their recommendations.
Exactly.
That's a whole new level of complexity.
It is, and it raises a lot of interesting questions about how these algorithms are going to adapt and evolve. Like,
Right.
will we see specialized recommendation systems designed just for AI agents?
That's a good question.
How are these systems going to balance the needs and preferences of both human and AI users? These are all things we'll need to figure out as this digital landscape keeps evolving.
It's like we're witnessing the birth of this new kind of digital ecosystem
Is.
where humans and AI agents are coexisting and influencing each other's experiences.
Exactly. And this coexistence has this incredible potential to unlock all sorts of new possibilities
Oh, yeah.
for learning, entertainment, even creativity. But it also presents challenges, too,
Yeah, I can imagine.
especially when it comes to ensuring things like fairness, transparency, and control in these really complex systems.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Now, before the break, we also touched on some of the downsides of all this personalization, right?
All right.
Like how these algorithms might influence our online experiences, maybe even create these things called filter bubbles.
Filter bubbles.
Yeah, have you heard of those?
Not sure. What are those?
So imagine living in a world where you only see news that confirms your existing beliefs, or where you only encounter content that reinforces your current tastes.
Okay.
That's what a filter bubble is. These algorithms, they're trying to personalize our experience, which is great,
Right.
but they might accidentally narrow our horizons and shelter us from different viewpoints or challenging ideas.
I see. So even though it's convenient to have this feed of content that's tailored to our interests,
Yeah,
we have to be aware that it might be creating some blind spots.
exactly. That's why it's so important to be aware of how these algorithms work and to actively seek out different perspectives and challenge our own assumptions.
So it's kind of like remembering that there's a whole world outside of our own personalized bubble,
It is.
and that we need to make an effort to step outside of that bubble
Yeah,
and engage with that wider world of information.
exactly. And as AI agents become more common in these systems, this whole challenge becomes even more complex.
For sure.
How do we make sure that they don't accidentally reinforce existing biases or contribute to these filter bubbles?
Those are all really important questions,
AR.
and I'm glad that we're talking about them.
Me too. I think this leads us right to the heart of what we're exploring in this deep dive, which is algorithmic awareness.
Okay.
As these algorithms become more advanced, they're not just processing data, they're developing the sort of awareness of the users that they interact with, both human and AI. This awareness has huge implications for how we see ourselves online and how we navigate this digital world that just keeps getting more complex.
This has been really insightful, but I'm curious, how do we as users navigate this new world of algorithmic awareness? What can we actually do?
That's a great question, and it's one that we're going to explore in the final part of our deep dive. We'll talk about algorithmic literacy and how we can manage our relationship with these powerful but often hidden forces.
I'm looking forward to that. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been talking about algorithmic awareness, and before the break, you mentioned this idea of algorithmic literacy.
Yeah.
What exactly does that mean?
So algorithmic literacy is basically being able to understand how these algorithms work, how they impact what we see online, and how we can kind of interact with them in a more mindful way.
So it's not just knowing that they exist, but actually understanding how they tick.
Exactly. Think of it like learning to read a map, right?
Okay.
A map doesn't just show you where things are.
Right.
It helps you navigate the world, make decisions about your route, maybe even discover some hidden gems you wouldn't have found otherwise.
I like that.
Algorithmic literacy is kind of the same.
Okay.
It helps us navigate this digital world,
Makes sense.
understand what we're shaping our online experience, and make better choices about the content we consume and the platforms we use.
So how do we actually develop this algorithmic literacy? Where do we even start?
Well, there's a few key steps. First, just be curious. Start paying attention to the recommendations you see on places like YouTube.
Okay.
Ask yourself, why am I seeing this particular video? What's the algorithm picking up on?
So basically becoming more aware of that invisible hand that's guiding our experience, not just blindly accepting what pops up.
Exactly. Then the next step is to explore those settings and controls that platforms offer. A lot of them, including YouTube, give you at least some insight into how their algorithms work.
Right.
And they let you adjust your preferences, manage your data, even give feedback on the recommendations.
So we're not completely powerless. We can actually shape our experience to some extent.
Absolutely. And lastly, it's crucial to diversify your sources of information. Don't just rely on those algorithmic recommendations to understand the world.
Yep.
Actively look for different perspectives, explore different platforms, engage with things that might challenge what you already believe.
So like remembering there's a whole world outside our personalized bubble.
Exactly.
And making an effort to, step outside of that and engage with that wider range of information.
Exactly. And, as those AI agents become more common on these platforms, algorithmic literacy becomes even more crucial. We need to understand how these agents are interacting with the algorithms, how they might be influencing those recommendations,
Yeah.
and what we can do to ensure those interactions are positive and they're not making those problems we've talked about even worse.
It sounds like navigating this whole digital world requires a shift in mindset.
Yeah.
We need to go from just consuming content to being more active and informed.
That's a great way to put it. Algorithmic awareness isn't just about those technical details of how algorithms work.
Right.
It's about recognizing their impact on our lives, our choices, even how we understand the world. It's about empowering ourselves to navigate this new digital reality with intention, critical thinking, and maybe a bit of healthy skepticism.
This deep dive has been incredibly insightful. We've gone from the nuts and bolts of how the YouTube algorithm works
Yeah.
to these bigger ideas about algorithmic awareness in a world where both humans and AI are shaping these systems and being shaped by them.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is. And I hope everyone listening has a better understanding of this complex digital dance and the importance of that algorithmic literacy.
Me too.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of algorithms and their growing awareness of us, the users.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep exploring the digital world with a critical eye.